going to go ahead and get started with our recipe today. I am excited. This is our last Whip It Up Wednesday, so I'm a little bummed that we've come to an end for this, but I'm excited to see what we have for lunch today. So Chef Herzig, this is on you, so go ahead and take it away.
Hey everybody, welcome. It's great to see you, and I too am sad that this is our last week together. We're going to try maybe keep it going a little bit sporadically. I'm maybe doing something on my own just to kind of engage people in cooking so that everybody keeps getting up from behind their desk once in a while to cook, and also just share some delicious recipes and cooking tips. So I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands and we'll get started. Need to boil our water for the ramen. For those of you that have followed along before, and I have mentioned about, nothing worse than trying to watch the pot boil. You always want to put a lid on your pot so that helps it move along a little bit faster. Today we're using ramen noodles rather than pasta, but I still like to take some fresh herbs. We've got cilantro in our recipe today, so we're going to go ahead and throw some stems and leaves of cilantro in there just to kind of flavor the water. And you may have remembered last week, for those that did not tune in, I talked about how to store lettuce and store some herbs. And one of the things that we talked about was that we grow all kinds of herbs here at our home. And the one herb that I have tried and tried, whether it's from a plant or from the seed, is cilantro. And every which way we've tried it, we have a hard time. So that's the one that I continue to have to go to the farmer's market or the grocery store and buy. And it also is one that rapidly spoils. So doing a lot of research and trying to make that longevity, what we do is you store this in a glass of water upright. Thank you, Atlanta United. Go United. And in your refrigerator, then what you want to do is put a plastic bag over it. You don't want to seal it, but you just want to store it like that in your refrigerator, and that helps extend the shelf life of cilantro. You can do that with other herbs as well. The one thing, as I did mention, you don't want to refrigerate is your basil, because it really doesn't like the cold. And these are all herbs from our garden. So we've got the basil, the parsley, and we've got some bee balm that I just love to put into waters and things like that. So we're going to go ahead while our water is boiling and start our sauce. So with that, we're going to add the sesame seeds. The recipe calls for 2 tablespoons divided. So we're going to take the 1 tablespoon and add that to our little mini food chopper. If you don't have one of these little mini food processors, I highly recommend it. They're very inexpensive. This one is a Cuisinart. I've had it for many years, but you can get them at a lot of different Target, Walmart, Amazon, and all of those places. It's just a really great little processor, and it keeps you from having to pull down the blender along the way. And we're then going to add our liquids. In this, we have 2 tablespoons of oil, a neutral oil, so not an olive oil, something like a safflower oil or grapeseed oil. You want to have it very neutral. We've got the sesame seeds and the sesame oil, the rice wine vinegar, and the mirin. And we're going to add that to the mini food processor. Along with our ginger. We're going to pulse this for about 20 seconds until it's well blended. Excuse me, there's going to be a little bit of noise here. I'll make sure you spread that around.
Hey, Chef, I have a question for you. If I didn't bring mirin, what should I use instead?
That's a great question. I actually didn't think I had any mirin this morning when I was getting my mise en place together. And I was like, oh, what can I do? So mirin is similar to sake. So you could use rice wine vinegar and then just add in a little bit more of the, substitute the rice wine vinegar for the mirin. Add a little bit of sugar, not a whole lot, just a couple of pinches of sugar, and that'll help you with substitution for mirin. So we're just going to set that aside. As we wait for the water to boil, a couple of other things that I wanted to mention. As you know, one of our friends during this cooking session for the past 3 weeks, and now this week number 4, has been our friends over at Beautiful Briny Sea. And today we're using one of their, the Sultan of Papadopoulos, which is actually a Greek seasoning. But as I was creating these recipes, I felt that that one would be a really good blend because it contains sea salt as well as garlic, oregano, turmeric, and a chili blend along with lemon. So it adds a really nice sea salty blend minus, giving it a lot of flavor to balance out the onion, the cilantro, and the sesame. So they have a lot of other products. They're located over in Grant Park, but they sell to a lot of restaurants and retail locations. And one of the things I have neglected to mention is that one of my favorites is the Magic Unicorn Sprinkles, because they do also the sea salt. But the sprinkles are really fun for all the kid in us, where you can use them for baking as well as ice cream. They're just a really great addition. And they did a promotion earlier on during the pandemic where they were giving part of the proceeds for the sale of Magic Unicorn to Children's Art Foundation. I think it was called Folk Art. So part of the proceeds went to that. And of course I stocked up on more of that because it's really a lot of fun. Our water is going rather slowly, but we'll continue on. Anna mentioned earlier when she joined in that she was in the process of cooking her chicken, which is great. That's one of the things that I really tried to emphasize this past 4 weeks is you can do some of these steps ahead of time so that you aren't taking up 30 minutes of your time off or your lunch break, work from home, or even if you are going to the office, where you can do this ahead of time. So yesterday I went ahead and boiled 1.5 cups of chicken. I added just a little bit of salt and cracked pepper to the water. You don't want to add a lot. You bring it to a boil, make sure that the temperature gets to food safety 165 degrees. If you do not have a kitchen thermometer, I encourage you to stop. You can stay right there. I encourage you, they come in all shapes and sizes. I think I have about 9 in my kitchen drawer, but you should really invest in this because food safety is one of the paramounts of no matter if you're dining at a restaurant or if you're cooking at home, you want to make sure that you're being very safe with your food. So 165 for chicken. This little handy dandy has actually the safety, if in case you don't know, it has the temperatures along the side of it. It's a little worn out over years of use, but something very simple, and yet you can again get those pretty much anywhere. And I would encourage you to do that. Okay, water's coming along. Are there any other questions coming across on the chat board?
No other questions right now. If anyone has any, please feel free to field them now.
That's great. And as I said, I would encourage you to continue to cook, but also my Instagram page is at @YellowBandChef. Just all one word. I post pretty much everything that we cook here in our home. My husband is a wonderful cook, and we love to do a lot of that together. And we also, if we do dine out, I usually post about where we've eaten and what we do. I encourage you also to please continue to support local restaurants at your comfort level. There's a lot of great restaurants here in Atlanta that have gone above and beyond with their safety measures. And whether you sit outside on their patio or go and order it and take it out, please support our local businesses because my industry has suffered gravely over the course of the past 8 months. And we would encourage you to do that. Instagram at YellowBandChef. Yeah. we're boiling. So we're just using ramen noodles. As for those of you that looked up the recipe ahead of time, anytime that I use ramen noodles and I buy them, if I don't buy them at the Asian market where you can get them without the seasoning, this little guy right here, no matter what flavor it is, it hits the compost, not in the packaging, but also there is so much MSG in this thing that it would raise your blood pressure very highly. I mean, MSG has its purpose somewhere in the culinary world, but not in my kitchen. So we just put these in there like that. We don't even break them up. You can break them up if you like. However, I like to keep them together because I think it's fun to play with your food every now and then. And these are going to boil for about 8 minutes. So I'm going to set my timer for that. And we'll let that go. Some of the other things that we talked about even last week when I talked about minimizing your food waste, and we look at these green onions that we're going to use in our dish earlier or later this morning or this afternoon. I mentioned to you last week, you can cut the tops off, the ends, the white part. I did that right around 11 o'clock this morning, and then I just took my knife and sliced them. And these make for a fun little garnish. So you'll see when we put together our lunch today, you can add that in there. And then you may have remembered, those that tuned in, we also like to minimize our food waste by go ahead and do this. These are from last week. For those of you that tuned in, you can see how they've grown. I mean, you can see the new growth here. So we'll continue to let those grow a little bit longer, and then we will plant them in our garden out on our deck for further use. So you want to try and give back to the earth as much as you can by not wasting as much food and vegetables as you can. One of the other partners for Livable Buckhead is Compost Now, which is also a company that we use here at our home. And it's been a wonderful tool for us because not only do we recycle our food waste back into the earth, but we can also get that product back. Oh, I can turn that around. We can get that product back in the form of compost for our garden, which has really helped.
Hey, Chef, I have a question that just came through. So you seem to use different colored cutting boards. Is there a reason for that?
Yes, that's a great question. The different colored cutting boards are, again, it goes back to the food safety. So for green and yellow are typically used for vegetables. There's red for raw meats, blue for chicken. White is kind of an all-purpose that you can use for dairy and things of that nature. But that was something many, many years ago that when I was a chef in North Carolina, we used those at Duke University because it was required by the Department of Health. And interestingly enough, when I moved out to California, when I was the executive chef for the Sacramento Kings NBA basketball team, we were using them in our kitchen. And the health department came around and asked me why I was using them, the health department of Sacramento County. And I explained that to them, and they came back and asked the Maloof family and myself if they could use us as a testing area to set the example for food safety, because what you want to do is it eliminates cross-contamination. You always want to wash your fruits and vegetables. Some of them you want to wait until the time that you're going to use them before you put them in the refrigerator, like your herbs and things of that nature, but you always want to wash. I think very first week we talked about, even if you're I was sitting at a bar many times, I will admit that. I love to sit at the bar and watch all the action. And I can remember watching this one young bartender, just kind of go back to the cooler and pull them out and start to cut them. And I said, "Did you wash them?" And he's like, "Oh, you don't have to wash them. We're just going to use them for the drinks." So you always want to make sure, because if you think about particularly lemons and limes and oranges, they're very porous, and so they will hold dirt, and you don't know whose hands they've been around. So you always want to do that. And then the other thing too is particularly like today we're using the green onions. green onions and bean sprouts are one of the, if you ever hear about a salmonella outbreak, it's usually green onions and bean sprouts. Lately, there's been a lot of lettuce, but yeah, so you always want to make sure that you wash those.
So I've got another question for you. For your knives, do you have a preference for either the brand or the types of knives that you use for different products?
Yes. And I will say that I do not get any endorsements or pay anything, but I use Global knives. These are knives that I've used for years. I love them because they're very lightweight, and they're very just beautiful. They're a Japanese knife. I have several of them. They're Global. There's also a wonderful knife. My husband actually prefers these knives a little bit. And actually, they're an American company over there in Tennessee. I think it's Franklin, Hammerstall. And he likes these because these are a little bit heavier. This smaller one is not so bad on my hands, but as much as I'm handling a knife, I love the Globals. And you do want to have like different sizes. You know, every knife has a different function. And you do want to like invest in a good knife. So thank you. That's a great question. There's a lot of other brands. I mean, this one here, this is a Wusthof. This is a beautiful slicer for carving meats, Thanksgiving turkeys. Scott can attest to that, having been a guest at our Thanksgiving table. But yeah, great question. There's a lot of great companies in Atlanta that carry knives. Our friends over at Cook's Warehouse, they have one location. Unfortunately, they've lost a couple of their locations due to COVID, but go visit them. They're over at Ansley Mall. They're great people, and they have a beautiful collection of a variety of knives from all over the world. So
I've got another question for you. Sorry, Chef. Can you repeat your Instagram again?
Yes, it's Yellow Band Chef. So I wear the Live Strong Yellow Band, which is the Cancer Foundation, and I've worn this since July 7th of 2004 when my husband first gave it to me. But I'm the Yellow Band Chef. There's other than that, there's that's it, Yellow Band Chef. So I'm going to go ahead. So one of the things you always want to do with ramen noodles is rinse them because they do have a lot of starch. So we're just going to do that in the colander and drain them, and then we're going to run them under cold water. When I first developed this recipe, it was based off some inspiration that I got from a colleague of mine. And I'll tell you, when I didn't even read it first off, and I made it very early on during the pandemic, just for lunch for John and I one day. And I was like, oh, surprisingly, it was cold. And this is what I love about this recipe is because you get so much flavor. But, you know, up until yesterday, the temperatures here in Atlanta have been unbearable this summer. And so it's been nice not to have a hot lunch every day or even at night. We've served this at night as well. So I'm going to go ahead and dump our noodles into this bowl here. And you want to go ahead and pull out. There's nothing wrong with them, but you just, because we left the stems and everything, you just want to pull that out. We're going to take this back over here to the bench.
Chef, is it okay to eat the stems of the cilantro?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with them. Just because they've been boiled in that hot water, they would probably be a little mushy. I always, unless I just am using them for garnish, I use the stems of all of my herbs. There's really nothing wrong with them at all. As you will recall, for those that have tuned in before, I do remove the stems off of spinach leaves. That's just a personal preference, but we either compost them or add them into salad dressings after we've chopped them up. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with eating the stems. So we're going to go ahead and add our sesame paste.
I have another question for you, Chef. Sorry, I keep interrupting, but with your thermometers, do you have a preference? I know you said you have a bunch, but is there a reason you pick one over others, or using some with different produce or anything like that?
No, that's a great question. Sometimes it's just a matter of what is handy. I will say, as I've gotten older, I prefer the digital ones a little bit more because they're easier to read, obviously. But also sometimes if I'm working in a large industrial kitchen, sometimes these dial or just regular dial ones in a cold setting, they don't work as rapidly as you would like. So. Just no personal preference. We also have an infrared one that we use. John and I have a brick oven outside on our deck, and we use that one there because the oven gets up to about 900 degrees, and obviously you don't want to stick your hand in there. So we're just going to mix this up really, really great. We're going to go ahead and taste. That's one thing that if you recall, I've always encouraged everyone to do is to taste as you go along so that you can adjust your seasonings. So always keep some plastic spoons or forks in your kitchen. Keep them handy. This is I'm gonna go ahead and taste this. Can't wait till y'all try this. That's really good. Not too salty. The soy sauce, you've got to remember, soy has there's a lot of beautiful flavor from the rice wine vinegar and the mirin. I tend to like things a little bit more citrusy. This is just a personal preference. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and squeeze some lime in there. That's not in the recipe. That's just something that I'm doing today. Beautiful. You can smell it. The ginger. It's one of my most favorite things to have in my kitchen is cooking with ginger. We're going to go ahead and add the chicken to this and mix it up really well. Sometimes you just want to use your hands. You just kind of want to dig in. And it's always good to have some gloves on hand so that not just for food safety, but some things are a little messy. There's certain things you always want to wear gloves with, like jalapenos and hot peppers when you're cooking with them. But this here is more of a matter of, because I don't want to get in there, but I want to make sure that the chicken gets well mixed into the seasoning of the soy and the mirin and the sesame noodles. And that's where we're at. And now all we have yet to do is put them in our bowls, top them with our scallions, our cilantro, and some extra sesame seeds. Gotta love these noodles. It's so easy, you guys. And so much flavor. And we're just gonna add some scallions on top. Some toasted sesame seeds, and a little bit of cilantro chopped for your garnish and flavor. And that's it.
Awesome. All right, here, check out mine. How's it look?
Looks great.
Awesome. Well, let's see if we've got any last questions before we head out. Someone asked if you can add other veggies to this. Do you have a preference?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, for color, you could add some red cabbage, and you'd get a nice crunch in there. You don't even have to cook it. You would just, make sure you wash it and slice it really nicely. Carrots, radishes, mushrooms, anything would really go well with this at all. So yeah, great question. Thank you for asking.
Amazing. All right. Well, we are officially done with our Whip It Up Wednesdays. We never have to call it that ever again, Chef. And it was a pleasure to work with you, and hopefully we will have future cooking classes with you. And if anyone has questions for the chef, please feel free to shoot us an email at Livable Buckhead, and we are happy to forward those on. So again, thank you guys so much.
Thank you, and I really want to thank everybody for tuning in, and I know a few of you have been following me on Instagram already, so keep cooking and have fun and be safe and just keep eating healthy. So take care, everybody.